Check OBS here. What's up, everybody? Happy Monday morning to everybody out there as I get set up here. You're with Zach, coming from my kitchen, and we're going to talk about some of the happenings with World War III, essentially, what's going on today, the front of war in West Asia. And we're going to talk about some of the realities of that front and that conflict. Pardon me, let me turn my stove off quick. Put the rest of this coffee in there. I don't know about you guys, but I don't let my coffee go to waste. I reheat that BI right on the stove. So that was yesterday's last pot of coffee, and now we can get going. Let's get a taste of that warm coffee. There we go. So yeah, man, I hope everybody's doing well. This really, the focus and point of this stream primarily has to do with the war that is declared upon Russia by the West, de facto war, right? And in Western society, here in America and across the neo-colonial corporate empire, they will tell us that these are different conflicts, right? What's happening in West Asia, they don't have anything to do with one another. So before I get into the articles, let me go in here, and we're going to do a screen share so I can show you guys. We can get some context to the situation. Context is always super important. Excuse me. I didn't even take a shower this morning, man. I just woke up and got working, and now I'm on live. So if I don't present the best, I apologize. Here we go. We're going to bring up my screen share, and I'm going to go ahead and hop on Google Earth. Let's max this screen out. Now, we're going to take a look at the map. Maps are great. Who doesn't love a good map, right? I don't know about any of you guys, but I'm 43, and God bless my grandparents. May you guys rest in peace. I miss you. And my grandfather, Simone, on my father's side, he had National Geographics all the time, and I had boxes of the maps that came in those. And boy, I loved looking at maps, and really did me well. He took care of me by and large, but maps really put everything in context. It's quite difficult to understand exactly what we're talking about and looking at if you don't have the proper framework, right? If you're not seeing the image clearly, if it's not in focus. The context provided by geography and the maps that we can see this geography is going to put things in focus for people, right? This is not separate, okay? These aren't separate conflicts. These are, you have, I apologize, my ear will not pop, so I'm trying to pop my eardrum. Up and down the line of conflict, right, across all of West Asia here, you have the sides splitting in two, okay? So while you may have a war happening up here, okay, this is the Ukraine where my cursor is. Hope you guys can see that, right? Here's the Dnieper River, Kyiv, all the way down. Crimean Peninsula, Crimea. Here's Moscow, okay, in Russia. Pull back just a little bit. Okay. So right in here, I believe it's either here or here, was the Kursk operation. It was right in this area. So they punched into here. This was the only time that Ukraine got onto Russian territory. The rest of this war has been fought, to the right of my cursor here, going up and down the Dnieper River. So you're talking about this area all in here. These are the republics that self-determined, to desire to be a part of the Russian Federation. Upon 2014, with the Western coup that happened starting in Maidan Square, after that coup, they increased the shelling, they increased the violence and the attacks that have been happening against Russian citizens or Russian-speaking people that lived in the east of Ukraine, right? These people pleaded to the Russian government for help, and this is the start, essentially, of this conflict. You know, when Putin and his men rolled in to Ukraine, whatever that was, February 2022, I forget, 2021, 2022, one of those. I think that he and many others assumed that he might just be welcomed in a sense. I don't believe that anyone thought that it was going to be, we were going to see the largest conflict, the most violent and intense modern warfare that we've seen since the Second World War. So if you look at this front, you know, you got Russia pushing to the right of the river. It looks as if they're about to take the river pretty much. That looks to be inevitable. It looks as if they're going to retake Kursk's region. Probably by the time Trump gets in office, they will have expelled Ukrainians out of Russia proper, or be close enough that it's irrelevant, and you might as well consider them as such. And likely by Trump coming into office, it looks like they might be able to take Odessa, or at least be pushing on Odessa. So essentially you got the Russians, they will have most of the area west of the Dnieper. The question is what happens up around Kyiv. I mean, this question is all over the place, but it looks as if they might try to take Odessa. It's very geographically, strategically important, because if they take this strip of land here, it essentially cuts off Ukraine from the Black Sea, and it landlocks them. So if you zoom in here, Odessa's right in here. Okay, so you can imagine there, you know, the port is all is around the city in here. It doesn't look as if there's any infrastructure in this piece of Ukraine that's down here. So even if the Russians get Odessa, and somehow you know, Ukrainians are able to keep a strip of land to access this bit down here, I doubt that they will have the infrastructure to you know, receive and send out shipping like they do around the city of Odessa and its surrounding area. So Odessa's, and you know, historically Odessa's been a Russian-speaking city, and you know, very, very close ties to Russia. But I mean, that goes for all Ukraine as well, right? So in addition to this front here, right, you got Tbilisi and Georgia. They have been, I think they're still protesting. I think they're still protesting. Hold on a second. Sorry, fam. You can't do that while I'm recording, buddy. So they've been protesting for, you know, pushing the third week down here in the capital of Georgia. And it's right to the south of Russia. This is the Russian Federation right here, right? Down into the Caucasus. Georgia right here, right? If they're essentially pulling off another Maidan, that's what they're trying to do in Georgia with Western intelligence, right? Basically, the Georgia Dream Party won the election, and they told the EU that they no longer want them in the country. So what was the EU's response? Well, the capital was flooded with EU flags, and we've had protests on the street now for pushing the third week. So they're attempting to start another Ukraine, right? Which is, this will be the second go around in Georgia. They already did this once. This is back to the whole South Ossetia and all these things, right? So you have this front of the war happening right through here. This is, again, what makes Turkey and Erdogan's decisions so important, because essentially with his actions in Syria, he has effectively united the north and southern front of this third world war, or you could certainly say a full-on regional war in West Asia. Now, there's a lot of other things happening around the world that would make you think this is a world war. You have parties from outside of this region involved in the war directly. You have things getting hot all across on the other side of Asia, right? South China Sea and Taiwan. Trump and the West now, it seems, I'm sure this is by some neocons surrounding Trump, but it seems as though there's a push now talking about, you know, making the Panama Canal relevant. Let's just say that. There's an issue of ownership of this canal that has now come up out of nowhere. And I believe I read a headline and part of an article that talked about essentially like a reassertion of a Monroe type doctrine. So, which, if you know your history, the Monroe Doctrine is President James Monroe, I believe it was him basically determining that we have a right to protect our sphere of influence. Excuse me. Essentially, Russia is acting on the Monroe Doctrine, and we are acting out against the principles of the Monroe Doctrine as we fund this war in Ukraine, because we're essentially expecting Russia not to be worried about what happens on their borders, which is what the doctrine says we have the right to do on our own behalf. So that Monroe Doctrine, of course, includes Central America and all the Americas in general. But the Panama Canal being right there in the middle of the Americas and having a drastic effect on shipping time, whether whether a ship is able to transit the canal or not, this is a vitally strategically important point. I believe that the talk of the canal, let's look at the canal here. I got the map up. Geez. So I think the talk of the canal comes from Yemen and what's been happening on the southern front of this war, because I did a live stream yesterday talking about with Syria how this was a land bridge and supply route over to Iran, and in general a supply route through Syrian territory that was able to supply Lebanon in Hezbollah in Lebanon and the rest of the axis of resistance across the Levant. So that's all been turned on its head, and you've seen now Israel turn their attention down to Yemen, and this is because they have effectively blockaded the Red Sea. And I did that live stream yesterday talking about this very thing. Go check it out. And then it was like hours later it broke that Yemen had shot down one of our fighter jets and chased another carrier group out of the Red Sea or the Arabian Sea, one right in here somewhere. So this was exactly what I was talking about in my live, right? And the escalations and aggression in the region around the Horn of Africa here and the waters south of the Arabian Peninsula, it proved to be true literally within hours of me talking about this. They have turned their attention to this blockade, right? They want to, just like they want to cut off this land bridge for supply routes, they're looking to do the same by opening up this blockaded sea passage. Additionally, it's going to enable Israel to supply through their southern port right here, right? Right here at the tip of this bit. I forget what that's called there. So this blockade has now, it seems as though it's turning into like a prime focus of the West to eliminate this blockade. I don't think it is any coincidence at all if we spin over here and we look at Panama like I was just discussing, and with this, I'll do a stream on it in a bit here. I'll show you some of these articles, but just in reference to this stream here and the world war that I'm presenting as such, I don't think there's any coincidence that the issue of transiting this canal now is important all of a sudden by America and the West here, right? We want to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen that happened right here in Yemen, right? If we'll get to that. I'll bring these articles up. I don't want to dive into that. So interesting stuff. Obviously, with things happening in Panama, with things happening over here on the other side of Asia, and then this war, which is not separate from one another. None of this is separate from one another. You have a front that's gone all the way through here. Turkey is literally a wild card at the moment. You have what's happening in Georgia. I mean, geez, there's stuff happening in Romania with their elections. The EU and the West is doing the same thing there. They're trying to upset a potential election of a candidate that would be anti-Western, anti-EU. I believe he won primaries, and they effectively stopped all elections until the final one, right? So it's just crazy, man. They are not, in the West here, especially the Democratic Party in America, they talked about how they're the party of democracy, and at the same time, just straight bold-faced lying through their teeth right to us all the time, and doing everything in their power seemingly to be anti-democratic and anti-freedom. We look at the Kamala Harris appointee, presidential candidate appointee rather, right? She should have been running against other candidates in an open primary, and that was against our Constitution, anti-democracy, anti-freedom for sure. So, look at this, man. We got this whole big war happening all through here. They're trying to do things. We're fighting live on the battlefield, rather, I should say. So we got, violent war happening all up and down. We got exterminations down here. We have the largest scale modern warfare the world has ever seen up on this front. And the threat is there to blow this whole thing wide open. The use of ballistic missiles, the use of hypersonic missiles, the drone technology, communications technology, basically battlefield internet connections and jamming. I mean, all these things are happening full on up and down this axis of West Asia. This is a world war, folks. So, Putin has said, according to his doctrine, that we are in war, right? Let's take a look at some of these articles. I wrote, let me see here. Yeah, I think we're done on maps. So I'll get out of this, and we'll go over here and work. Well, yeah, we'll go over here. So I've written some articles on my Substack that deal with this. By and large, most of my articles on Substack have been dealing with this issue. Either one of the conflicts or the world war as a whole, but definitely looking at the face-off and escalation between the West and Russia, and then definitely looking at the atrocities and the wholesale extermination happening in Palestine. So with Russia, one of the most recent things that's been going on is in Biden's transitionary lame duck period that we're now right in the middle of, right? 5 weeks left until he hands over power, hopefully, to Trump. He has gone forth to completely change his policies on how he was conducting this proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. So I wrote an article that discusses this at length. Biden's lame duck, I'll bring it up here. Lame duck limp to January 20th. Let's see. And this talks about really this policy shift. So we'll go right here. So it talks about this policy shift, right, to escalate at all costs, seemingly, because this is what's happened since they lost the election. For months and months leading up to the election, this use of ATACMS missiles and using them to strike inside Russia was a huge contested issue, and it was a red line that Biden and his administration seemingly was like refusing to cross. This changed in this lame duck period, right? And after they lost the election. So check this article. It talks about all these things, but part of this escalation was by default, according to Russian law, according to their policy, these attacks have put the West and U.S. in a state of declared war with the Russian Federation. This is something that's been not quite talked about as such here in Western media, although it's something that's not going away. I wrote about this straight away, and this is not, you know, in the week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever, 3 weeks since, this is not going away. I've seen numerous articles that discuss basically Russia reminding the West of what happened. Hey, we're at war, right? You are at war with us, and that's what these articles that I'm about to show you here have to deal with. Now, in the escalation process, right, that's happening, as our behavior and decisions to strike inside of Russia have put us in this state of declared war. There's been numerous exchanges between the Kyiv regime, right, and the Russian Federation. So Kyiv has used the ATACMS, they've used the Storm Shadows, they've used drones to strike inside Russian territory numerous times, right? I believe they just struck somewhere with drones like 600 miles inside of the Russian border just 2 days ago. So each time there's been an exchange of fire between two sides, right? This most recent one, this is from December 20th, 2024, and this is just a collection of pictures from Kyiv following one of these most recent exchanges. I believe this was the last one. I think right now Russia had said that they would respond, you know, to the latest attacks, right? So there's another seemingly expected response coming on Russia's behalf, right? So this is going up. The escalation is going up and not down. We are going forward and not backward. And this is part of why I want to make this content, is because I believe that citizens here in the West actually have a chance to affect things here, man. We are in the most tense period of time that any of us have ever lived through right now. And aside from this issue with Russia, right, there's also the extermination of a whole peoples happening in the Levant and in occupied Palestine. So there's just history being written left, right, and center. And if we don't say anything as citizens of the West, as citizens of the side who is perpetrating all these crimes, these war crimes, then our silence gives consent. And, you know, if Putin would not be attempting to restrain this at all costs, which I will show in this one article here, this would be a full-on war. This would have exploded far beyond the borders of Ukraine by now. You know, Americans are ignorant to the type of war that's happening over there. This is not like anything that any of us have seen in our lifetimes. The war that's going on in Ukraine. Let's look at these pictures of the strike at Kyiv here in this recent exchange, right? Because this is what we all have coming down the pike if we don't change course, okay? There's going to be war brought to major metropolitan areas of the West, for sure, if we do not alter how we are behaving on the world stage. Okay, look at this. These are just Kyiv after Russia's missile attack. Russian forces unleashed a massive missile attack on Kyiv, causing significant destruction across the city early morning Friday, December 20th. Residents of Kyiv were awakened by air raid sirens at 6:40 a.m., triggered by the takeoff of MiG-31K fighter jet. Shortly after, explosions began to rock the city. This could be happening all over any of these NATO member states, and the only reason it's not is because the other side has shown restraint. They don't want to escalate into a full world war, right? It's our side that is doing, our side that's doing everything in their power to do so. Kyiv Post correspondents reported hearing at least 8 powerful blasts as the Ukrainian Air Force issued repeated warnings of high-speed missile targets. Look at that crater in the middle of the street. Authorities continue to evaluate the extent of damage and assist those affected as Kyiv endures another wave of relentless missile strikes. This is what has, what can only be expected, right? I mean, every step along the way of this escalation, Putin and Russia have been very clear about what is to come should we continue to do what we're doing. It should be no surprise, and we should be doing everything to be a bit more cooperative, right? We are literally like raging maniacs right now, and it's really disgusting what's being done on our behalf on the world stage. Let's continue. Look at these. So, again, this is really to highlight the fact that, look at this beautiful history being destroyed, which is a common theme we can get into, right? But, yeah, look at this. So we can expect more of this stuff, guys. That's what we're talking about here, right? Because let's go back to the Google Earth. And just to look at something quick, this is a massive war that's happening, right? Let's look at the southern front. The really quick, the Gaza Strip, which Israel has obliterated. I mean, you can even see it on the Google Earth map. It's wiped out. Look at it. Look at it. Those aren't like metro areas of development. Those are metro areas that have been turned to rubble. I mean, this is insane. Insane what we are witnessing. I'm sorry if that was not centered. Let me give you guys a look at that again. Insane. But let's just, for perspective, what Israel is doing, it's 40 kilometers north to south, okay? This is why a lot of people are saying about what's happening in Syria, may not be, let me pull back here and we'll take a look at Syria quick. May not be a big deal because what we have is down here, here's northern Israel, Haifa, Lebanon, Beirut, here's Damascus, right, the Golan, Galilee. So Israel has been taking territory, concentrating forces in their Golan occupied area and taking more territory in the surrounding area that was or is part of the sovereign nation of Syria, right? So there's a lot of concerns of Israeli expansion in this area, but they can't hold all this land. That's the thing, right? So all this is still up in the air in this area, but I just want to put this in perspective. Like, Israel is conducting an extermination down here in Gaza on an area that's 40 kilometers long. They had trouble pushing up into Lebanon and Beirut. They got basically stuck by Hezbollah along the border. And like I said, no matter how far they expand up into Syria, they don't have the military to hold it. This is why they're like all out destroying everything while they can. I mean, there's probably multiple reasons for that, but the wholesale destruction of Syrian military infrastructure and civilian infrastructure is going to be an assist to the Jewish ability to retain and hold land of Syria's, right? If you can hurt Syria's ability to function and fight you by taking away their infrastructure, then you might be able to stretch a little bit more square mileage out of your military, right? But regardless, this is tiny. I mean, you know, let's measure Syria quick, right? So from the coast over here to Kurdistan, you're talking 576,000 kilometers, okay? We'll get that out of here. And then from the Golan to Turkey, basically 550, right? 543,000 kilometers. So Gaza is tiny. And what we're seeing down there, I mean, just because it's on a small area of land doesn't, you know, take away from how evil and significant what we're seeing is. I mean, it's disgusting. What's happening on that small strip of land will go down in history as probably one of the worst things ever committed to by humanity. And in addition to that, the silence by those in the world who are choosing to sit here and not say anything and let this happen will go down as one of the most disgusting things in human history. Like, you think the stories of the Germans who you know, according to the story we know, sat there and allowed the people to be burned or allowed these concentration camps to happen right there outside of their towns, right? You think that's a bad story, man? You know, the West and the Western citizens right now are saying, hey, man, hold my drink. Germans. Hold my cup. Nuremberg trial. It's crazy. Look at this front and how big this front is. Let's go and take a look at, boom, Kursk. Let's just go to Odessa. 720,000 kilometers. To Crimea, 900,000 kilometers. If we go, look at this area, the heavy fighting has been up and down kind of this area in here. We'll just stretch it there. 500,000 kilometers, okay? Roundabouts. So just to put all this in perspective, again, these wars certainly are very close to each other and they don't seem unconnected to me. And I hope that, you know, by this point in this presentation, you can see that. But let's take a look at what those distances mean for us here. I live right here, Lebanon, Pennsylvania, right here in PA. Let's see, how big is our East Coast? You know, we'll go all the way to the tip of Maine. So the tip of Maine to New York, 850,000. Here, let me do this one. We'll go Boston to DC. Let's do that. So we'll go Boston down here to DC. 629,000 kilometers. So the distances that we're talking about there in Ukraine and the Russian war is literally a wide open front of war along an area from Boston to Washington, right? We're talking about a wide open front of war. You know, Atlanta to Miami, 900,000, right? Let's go Jacksonville. So you're probably looking at the whole state of Florida. Jackson, yeah, easy, right? So this is a war front that is larger and stretches further than the distance between Jacksonville and Miami, which is 525,000 kilometers. Okay? Whereas, let's look at Gaza, right? What's the Gaza Strip is just Orlando to Tampa is 124,000 kilometers. So Gaza is only 40,000 or 40 kilometers rather, 40,000 meters. It's tiny. It's tiny. Just to put some more of this in perspective for you guys here. Let's go from San Francisco to San Diego. San Francisco to LA, 550 kilometers. This, yeah, you guys probably know what I'm saying. I know of the hundreds of thousands and meters and kilometers. I believe I've been messing that up. My mind was focusing on these other things, but I think you guys get what I'm saying, right? So here we go. This front of war is literally all of California, San Francisco to Los Angeles, and really down to San Diego. Maybe not Northern California there, but this is how big this front is here in Russia. This is a massive front of war that we are watching being fought for. Trench warfare like the world hasn't seen since World War I, and coupled with the use of modern technology that the world has never seen. So let's look at finally some of these articles. Now we got some like a half hour plus of proper context. From Europa. This is, an online website, news website. Titles, "We Are at War with Russia," December 21st, 2024. During a meeting of State Council of the Russian Federation on Friday, December 20th, Vladimir Putin conceded that war had been declared on the Russian world. During a direct line combined with the press conference, the head of state noted that Russia is repelling 27 NATO countries. However, despite facing down economic and military aggression, the president said that over the past 2 or 3 years, the country has become significantly stronger, which is true. War has been declared on the Russian world today, Putin said during a meeting of the State Council of the Russian Federation on issues of family support. Colleagues from the Duma spoke and said that war had been declared on the Russian world. That is how it is, the president said. In this way, Putin commented on the words of the head of the Russian Federation, Gennady Zyuganov, who earlier at the meeting said that a war of extermination had been declared on the Russian world. The parliamentarian drew attention to the decline in the population in the post-Soviet years, noting that further decline of Russians means the impossibility of solving the problem of either security or sovereignty. We are becoming a truly sovereign country. We are no longer dependent on anyone. We can confidently stand on our feet from the point of view of the economy. I have already spoken about the pace of economic development. We are strengthening our defense capability. The combat readiness of our armed forces today, I say with confidence, is at the highest level in the world, the head of state said. He added that Russia is increasing the capabilities of its defense industry, increasing production of everything necessary for the Army and Navy. Putin mentioned that the development of the defense industry also ensures the success of the Russian armed forces. This is happening not least because of the growth of production in the defense industries of the Russian Federation. We are doing this, I repeat, confidently and quite rationally. It was said that our troops are advancing along the line of combat contact. Due to what? Including due to the availability of the equipment I just mentioned. Yes, practically all NATO countries are fighting us, he said. At the same time, the head of state emphasized that Russia is to a larger extent in the state that the country's leadership was striving for. It has grown stronger, it has become a truly sovereign country, and we will make decisions without any regard for other people's opinions. We will be guided only by our national interests. In addition, commenting on his contribution to the development of Russia, the president expressed the opinion that he kept the country from falling into the abyss. I believe that we have moved away from the brink of the abyss because everything that happened to Russia before and after Boris Yeltsin's resignation led us to a complete total loss of our sovereignty. Without sovereignty, Russia cannot exist as an independent state, the president suggested. So this article has all to do about, it's another, piece put out there by the global south and by our opposition that's reminding us and the whole world of the state of affairs. Putin is talking facts here when he's saying about the NATO countries that have declared war with Russia. So while here in the West, we want to say that we're just funding Ukraine, their policy, law, and doctrine dictates that due to our involvement in funding Ukraine, we have crossed the line of just supporting them, and we are now actively at war with the Russian state because of our support of Ukraine. Read about that in a bunch of my articles, how the West was lost, the lame duck lip to January 20th that I just showed up here. I talk about these things at length in those articles, so check out the Substack. Let's see what else we got going on here. We got Putin responds to World War III claims. So this is interesting because while at the same time he hasn't been, resigned to like avoiding this issue of World War III by any means. He's their side has been quite clear about this state of relations between NATO, the West, and Russia. These attackums put us in a state of war with Russia. However, Putin has done the most to keep this war contained to the region and not expanding into a third world war. This can be seen in his use of the Oreshnik and how he essentially rewrote deterrence, mutually assured destruction as it pertains to the use of nuclear weapons is no longer a thing. And he sidestepped the West and Biden, the Biden administration's push towards nuclear conflict. That seemed inevitable, and it seemed like they were certainly wanting this here in the West. And Putin did a wonderful job. Hey, fam. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. Oh, he's snoring. So he did a great job sidestepping that, or else we'd be in nuclear war. Now, check out what he has to say about this here, because this is very revealing on, what I think is the truth of his opinion and perspective. The threat level is rising globally, but there is no need to scare people with talk of World War III, Russian President Vladimir Putin said. During an interview published by Russia One TV journalist Pavel Zurabin on Sunday, Putin was asked if the extensive involvement of the U.S. in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine meant that World War III has already begun. One should not scare people, the president replied. However, he added that there are many dangers and they keep increasing. We see what our current opponents are doing. They are escalating the situation, Putin said, after Zarubin mentioned plans by the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden to drastically increase the amount of weapon deliveries to Ukraine during his final weeks in office. This is uptick in policy and escalation that I was talking about and that I talk about in that article, the lame duck lib to January 20th. Back to the article. If they want it so much, if their life is so bad, let them escalate, the president stressed during a conversation recorded after his end-of-year press conference on Thursday. Russia will always respond to any challenge coming from the West, he insisted. And when our current opponents and maybe potential partners will finally understand and realize this, it seems to me that at that point the realization will come that what is needed is to seek compromises, he said. Moscow is ready to rebuild ties with the U.S. and its allies, but it should only happen without harming our interests, Putin pointed out. So that's it for that article. So, any of you guys that are not familiar with Vladimir Putin, you should check out the end-of-year press conference that they referred to in that article. This is something that he does yearly, and he goes up there and gives non-stop answering to whatever question. He fields all questions, and he basically answers stuff off the head for hours and hours, right? This happened just a few days ago. Some of you might have seen soon-to-be President Trump, or President-elect Trump, rather. He had given a lengthy press Q&A in recent days. This was on the same day that Putin did his address. I think that there was a little bit of soft diplomacy happening between those two Q&As. But either way, just to give you guys context on that situation, check out the Putin addresses. And he's a very, very reasonable dude. Not at all the person I believe that we've painted him out to be in our media. So I think that about sums it up here, man. Yeah, really just wanted to talk about this escalation, talk about the current state of things. You know, this war has claimed many casualties, and the reason that we don't know about the truth of Putin, or we don't know about the truth of these issues, has largely to do with the censorship, the illegal censorship by the government here in the West, by American government and other Western governments, by the way that they use the media to lie and control narratives, and they use their power to snuff out the truth whenever they see it. Anything that goes against their narratives at any certain time that they, see fit, they can stop it, right? And it's interesting because we've all seen now in the last few years things that you can talk about at one point you can't talk about at one point, later you can, and vice versa. And it's because of this information warfare and violation of our rights here in the West of censoring free speech that this has all allowed to persist the way it has, and to develop the way it has, right? There's been a lot of victims, man. Very quickly, Gonzalo LIRA, rest in peace, Gonzalo. I'm not going to play this video, but I linked it in the description, I believe, and I'll double check that. I urge any of you guys to check this out. I like Kim Iverson. I'd say 90% of her stuff, I think she's really, really good. She covered Gonzalo LIRA recently. He's a YouTuber, a guy just like me, or a guy just like you. He was covering the conflict in Ukraine, and he was in the region, traveling through Ukraine. I believe he was in both Russian and Ukrainian controlled territories, but he was traveling through that region, through West Asia, and was basically taken prisoner by Ukrainian forces. He was then released. I remember seeing the video when he was released. He looked in bad shape. He was on his motorbike and trying to basically get out of Dodge. And this had come after him disappearing for a short period of time, and everyone was concerned with Gonzalo and his well-being. So he pops back up. He's headed out of town or out of the area on this motorbike, and then that was, I believe, the last we heard from him. And it turns out as though he was apprehended at a border crossing and taken back into Ukrainian custody. And he died under their control, and while in their control, he was likely abused. He was likely tortured. He likely had a pretty rough last few weeks of his life, and it was because he was speaking out and trying to speak the truth. He didn't say anything that was inflammatory one way or the other, bad one way or the other. This man was just reporting things on the ground, things that the West didn't want you to hear. And he paid the price with his life. And this should be, all these people that have died like this should be a warning and a red flag. We're all on the menu, man. And I mean, if those shots didn't tell us that, we're all on the menu, dude. We're all in the target. We can't sit here and be silent, guys. We got a whole people's being slaughtered. We have our insane administration trying to push us into war. And in general, we have this crazy military industrial complex of the West just wanting to push us to war. So I hope you guys found this informative. Check out this video on Gonzalo LIRA. It talks about basically how the Biden administration let him sit and rot. I think there was a quote in there. It has a bunch of emails, right? And it only came from Freedom of Information release. But these emails were redacted State Department officials basically communicating regarding the captivity of Gonzalo Lira. And they were just like, we're in no hurry. Like, they basically sat on their hands. And the likelihood is that they probably did more than that. They probably okayed his death in a sense, right? Let's make an example out of him. We know there's eyes on him, and people will see what happens to him here, and they'll learn from it. I think that's exactly what this situation is, and that's terrifying that anyone could fall victim to such treatment only due to only due to reporting the truth, only due to talking about reality. Red flags, man. All right, let me get out. I'm gonna pull on out of here, and give me a second. Pop over to OBS. I'll kill that. So yeah, man. I hope you guys found this informative. I hope everybody's doing well out there. How long have we been on for? 50 minutes. All right. So yeah, man. Happy Monday morning. Happy Monday morning. I think I'm gonna hop back on here. I'm gonna grab something to eat, and I'll hop back on here in a little bit. And I think I might just do a little freestyle live and talk about some issues and see what comes to mind. So blessings out. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody has a Merry Christmas out there, and enjoy your families, enjoy your loved ones, and remember that these things are at risk. All these things that we all are going to take the time to enjoy in our lives, these are all at risk. These aren't givens. There's millions of people around the world that don't have a warm place to stay because of the warfare that our country supports, right? They don't have a warm house to sit in for Christmas dinner. There's ancient Christian and religious sites that likely hosted Christmas celebrations or Christmas ceremonies that are no more. They've been destroyed in this war. It's disgusting, man. The human toll is inexcusable, and our silence is similarly inexcusable as citizens of the West. We need to speak up, and we need to secure a future that is positive and healthy for ourselves and our children. So check it out. Look for me later. Everybody have a nice week, and I hope you have a good rest of your Monday. Like I said, I ain't in the chat, so if anybody is watching, thank you. Stay tuned. I'm going to keep doing this thing, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, man. Peace. We got to go over here to do that. All right, y'all, later.